Hey guys, it's Daniel with another perspective for you guys. So we got a great story that happened. We're usually used to a little bit of weird stuff happening, but in this case we got AOC and Bernie Sanders coming together to put forward a bill to reduce the rate of credit card interest. Now, this is a really huge deal considering the average credit card interest in the US is about 17%. It's a lot of money, it's a very high rate, and as we know, it affects mainly people who don't have the most money, who need to take out money before their paychecks to buy groceries or pay bills. So this bill would be really fantastic, capping that rate at 15% versus, again, 70% average, sometimes up to 30%, sometimes a few 100%. There's nothing to stop credit card companies from charging whatever they want. These companies make over $100 billion per year on these credit card rates. So this is a transfer of wealth from everyday Americans to credit card companies, which of course is the 1%. So this is currently a system where the 1% are making money off the backs of regular people paying interest rates that are absurd. Let's get into it.
Another story you're writing about today, Senator Bernie Sanders and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are introducing legislation that would cap credit card interest rates and postal banking. What is the proposal here? Also notable, it's a two-page proposal, not a 400-some-odd page term paper that some politicians like to turn in when they propose laws. And then what's kind of your take on how this could be a good or bad thing for consumers?
These are not new ideas. So this idea has been around for a long time, that you could have a federal law that would just put a cap on what banks and credit card issuers can charge. The cap would be 15%. Some charge as high as 25 or 30%. And unless states put their own limit on it, there actually is no limit on what a credit card can charge you. So it sounds like a good idea, but people have studied this for a long time, and even consumer advocates say part of the problem here is that banks make money off of this, and if you limit their ability to make money off of this, they're going to do some other things that you have to think about. So they probably will rein in their credit. They'll probably offer credit cards to fewer people because they can no longer sort of set those interest rates very high for risky borrowers. So how do you extend credit to risky borrowers then and make sure you don't take a bath on that? Well, you raise other fees, or else you just don't offer them credit. It's also possible that people who are looking at the interest rate going down, let's say you're paying 25%, it goes down to 15%. You might say, oh, now I can put more on my credit card and carry a balance for basically the same amount because it's cheaper now. That's also sort of a bad incentive. So the other part of this is postal banking. Again, an idea that has been looked at. The Postal Service already will cash money orders and it will cash government checks. So the idea is, why don't you just let the Postal Service set up basic banking services for people who can't afford a traditional bank or
a credit union?
Yeah, it would be sort of like a public credit union. It could be low fee. There have to be some fees, but low fees. So you could actually do that. We have to keep in mind that the Postal Service already loses money on an annual basis. So
term paper reference aside, this is a very odd articulation of things that are happening. On one side, he's saying, hey, if you make banks charge people reasonable interest rates, they might not give out as many credit cards, they'll add some fees here or there, whereas you can keep regulating them if you want to deal with it on that end. But at the other end, he's starting to get into the post office segment, which actually also solves the exact same problem. They don't really make that connection on there at all. But the banks, public banks through post office, which are small loans, seem rather reasonable. We've talked about that before on the show. But I think it's very interesting that he cuts over to what you just heard at the very end, which is the post office is losing money and how can they possibly manage money? And they're going to get into it further, how they think the post office is going to be terrible at managing money because it's making losses. Now, I want to bring your attention to why that is. It's from a 2006 law passed by Congress that puts restrictions on the post office that no other business, public or private in the U.S., have to follow. The post office, with its 400, 500,000 employees, has to pay all pensions up to the year, I think, 2056 ahead of time. Now, you tell me what small business would not chafe and fall apart if all of a sudden they had to pay pensions in advance. So if if you make I'll just go with Walmart numbers. If you're a Walmart employee, you're paid, $17,000, $18,000 a year, and you generate about $80,000 of revenue for Walmart if you're just a regular sales employee. So that's for Walmart, that's fantastic. You're making 75%. 75% of the revenue goes somewhere else, and you pay them a quarter what they make. But if Walmart had a pension system, which would be absurd, I know, but if they did, and they had to pay for all their employees ahead of time, so how much is a pension of 60 years if you have to pay it ahead of time? It would make every single employee a loss. Every time you would hire someone, you'd have to put aside $1 or $2 million. I'm not exactly sure how much post office pensions are, but the post office has to pay those pensions and has to prepay them ahead of time, and it can't take any money from the government. So it has to do all of this on its own. So people that are saying, oh, the post office is irrelevant, that's why they're losing money. They're losing 3% in mail. I don't think 3% of letters is going to be $1 billion loss or $1.5 billion. No, this is a self-imposed stab wound at the post office. They have to prepay their own people years in advance, something that no one else has to do. But these PhDs, I'm sure, aren't aware of that. Let's keep going.
Getting the Postal Service into banking where it has no expertise may not be the best idea. The real problem with this idea is that Sanders and AOC also want the Postal Service to make low-interest loans.
Yeah.
Now think about this for a second. The people who would be asking for these loans are generally higher-risk borrowers who are not getting them from the bank.
Poor people.
Banks. So if you're having a low interest rate, we know how banks price risk. They charge you a higher interest rate based on how risky you are. And if you tell risky borrowers who might not pay the money back, oh, just go to the Postal Service and you can get a loan for 5 or 8%. Well, who's going to pay for that if they default? That's going to be taxpayers. Right. And that's why that part of postal banking sounds like a bad idea.
So apparently it's a terrible idea to give low interest loans to poor people. Those are only for the wealthy and the elite who can already sit on a pile of money and get those kind of loans. Now, I want to make this very specific point with this, because I want to turn this entire thing on their head, because of course Yahoo knows news. So this is competition for the banks. I thought everyone loved competition. Banks say they can't give lower loan rates than they already do, even though they get money at basically a 0% rate for the past several years since the housing market crash and we bailed out the banks. They've been taken care of for a while, and they're saying, well, the only way we can possibly make a small amount of the littlest amount of profit is if we charge 15% plus, or I guess 17% again. So they're saying that they can't do this without, if they have to lower their money just a little bit, they're just going to run out of business. How are they going to do it? I don't know. How are they paying for their golden parachutes? How are they paying for these mega donations, or mega severances, bonuses, what have you? The banks are there to make money, and they're making more money than some of the richest people in the world exist on Wall Street. So those people can't take a haircut. Those people can't trust the poor to be good with money, even though in 2008 they crashed the entire economy. This is the kind of thought that we have on all mainstream media. The poor make terrible decisions that don't matter and will put people, it's the bad decisions of the poor, and the rich are fantastic and do great work. And this is exactly what we've come to expect in the media. So I, for one, want to congratulate Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for putting together this bill, and it's just this continual build-up towards the election. Do we think that this is going to get passed now? No. Nancy Pelosi is very close to the bank, so she's not going to go for it, and obviously Mitch McConnell is owned by corporations, so he's not going to go for it. But this brings up options and possibilities, and having a competitive banking sector might not be a bad idea. Guys, I'll see you on Saturday.